Are you ready for your window shoppers to become paying customers? Ecwid e-commerce is here to make that happen. We can help you automatically show the exact product visitors saw but didn't purchase on your site wherever they go on Facebook and Instagram using this magic called dynamic Facebook retargeting. To show these ads to your prospects today, sign up in your Ecwid control panel in the marketing section and look for the Facebook remarketing app. This is fully integrated into Ecwid and Facebook and so simple and effective you'll wonder why you hadn't done this sooner. To help you decide, if you sign up now and spend $50 by February 15th, you'll receive a free $100 advertising credit from our friends at Facebook. Okay, back to the show.
This is the Ecwid E-Commerce Show with your host, Jesse Ness, along with Richard O'Tay.
Hey, Richard, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Excited to get some knowledge in here.
All right. So today is Knowledge Day. We're going to talk about one of the two inevitable things in life, death and taxes. And which one do you think we're talking about today?
Since it's an e-commerce show, I'm guessing taxes.
Yeah, we'll save death for another subject another day
or another podcast.
Yeah, I don't know. That's probably okay. That's another podcast. Yeah, for sure. All right. So with taxes, we want to bring on our partner from TaxJar. This is the CMO of TaxJar, Lizzie Greenberg. How you doing, Lizzie?
I'm great. How are you guys?
Excellent.
Thanks.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Lizzie, where are you calling in from today?
I'm calling from Houston, Texas. So TaxJar is a fully distributed company. We're all over.
Oh, wow.
But we're super excited to be on the show, and I'm really glad I didn't dial in for the death podcast.
Yeah, that one's not a very exciting show. Yeah, I don't know. We'll get that on the schedule sometime. I don't know. All right. Well, all right. Back to taxes. So Lizzie, taxes usually doesn't make the headlines very often, but it has this past summer with the Supreme Court decision, or maybe it was earlier maybe it was in spring. But for you guys, I bet you've been pretty busy with people all of a sudden thinking about sales taxes.
Yeah, it's definitely been, a change of pace, seeing sales tax in the news. And, it's, again, not a topic that you hear about very frequently, but it's definitely something coming top of mind for a lot of e-commerce sellers. So we're happy to be the resource to help provide guidance and some knowledge on it.
Well, so with all the customers you have, what kind of questions are they bringing to you with this, with the Supreme Court decision? Yeah,
so there's a lot of questions. So folks, I don't know how much we want to get into what's actually happening, or if folks already know about kind of the ruling and what happened with Wayfair, or start there. But a lot of the questions are really around how to handle it.
Yeah, I'd say go ahead and go into a little bit just in case, because some people tend to avoid. Hopefully they're not evading, but they tend to avoid this. And so, yeah, definitely give us a little backstory on what exactly was the decision.
Yeah, sure. So previous to this ruling, the most prominent thing that relating to sales tax that sellers needed to worry about was figuring out where they had physical nexus. So what that means is where you have sales tax nexus in a state is where you need to pay sales tax. So if you're new to sales tax and you're thinking, okay, do I need to pay in every single state and collect in all states in the U.S.? The answer is no. You really only need to figure out sales tax for the states that you have nexus in, which is where you're doing business in that state as defined as a physical presence. So a lot of things that gave e-commerce sellers nexus in a state would be things like a warehouse, things storing inventory, brick and mortar retail locations. If you had employees in the state, there was a number of different things, and they're really all primarily tied to a physical presence. And so as you see the growth of e-commerce with things like Amazon and awesome tools like you guys have with Ecwid, e-commerce is really booming. And the law was really written primarily for kind of that old brick and mortar world with this, huge physical component to it. And a lot of the states want a piece of that revenue. They see the sales tax happening with brick and mortar, but they don't see as much of it happening with e-commerce. And so a lot of the states decided to come up with something that we now refer to as economic nexus. And South Dakota was one of the first to put it into play. And South Dakota said, hey, I know that a lot of these retailers do not have a physical presence in my state in terms of operating those warehouses, inventory, or brick and mortar stores. But the fact is you guys are doing business in our state, and we want a piece of that revenue. We want the sales tax to be charged. You're delivering products via our roads and all of that. So we're providing, assistance in your business. So we're defining a significant presence as two things. And these are the two things you'll see common with anything relating to the states in economic nexus. One being a number that's a revenue threshold, and another one being a transaction threshold. So South Dakota came down and said, hey, if you are doing over 100,000 transactions in our state, or you're selling over 200 products shipping into our state, we now are requiring you to comply with sales tax.
Got it. So even though that you don't have a physical presence there, which was really the old standards, now if you sell a certain amount of products in South Dakota, you're now required to pay sales tax there.
Yep. And so they put this out there, and then in order to kind of prove it, they sued a bunch of companies. Wayfair was one of the prominent ones that took them to court over it. And so this Wayfair versus South Dakota is the ruling that went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And then what happened was in June of this year, the Supreme Court ruled that South Dakota was right and fair in requiring Wayfair to comply with sales tax laws in their state because they had met those thresholds that South Dakota put in place. So essentially, a bunch of different states had economic nexus laws on the books before this ruling came out, but there was no precedent in order to actually enforce that. So with this ruling, the reason why it's getting so much press and why people are figuring out, okay, now I have to handle sales tax in a new way, and why it's confusing is because this is the first time when there's a precedent to legalize an economic nexus law. So it kind of blows up the whole idea of only having to comply in sales tax in states that you have a physical presence in. Now you may never, even visit the state, but if your business is doing business in that state and they have an economic nexus law that you meet, you're not required to.
So is this happening on a state by state basis? Because that was an interesting number, $100,000 or 200 products. I mean, like average $500 order. It's going to affect different people different. And I'm just wondering, is every state going to run with that same number, or how are they handling that?
Yeah, so that's what's happening right now. And so every day, every week, things are changing. So right now there's I think, mid-20s of how many states actually have economic nexus laws on the books. But now that this is happening, you'll see a lot more states are starting to create them every day. So I think yesterday, actually, Maryland came out with their description. So it's not standardized. It's not 100,000, 200 transactions across every state. That's specifically to South Dakota. So one of the tricky things with sales tax is that everything is managed at the state level. There's no kind of governing body or IRS that handles sales tax. It's all state level. So each state defines it differently. So we have some states that are coming out saying $100,000, 200 transactions. We have some states that are saying 100,000 and 500 transactions. It all is different for every single state. And there's even some states that are lowering that to saying, Oklahoma right now is looking at doing $10,000 for the economic nexus limit. So that really changes things in terms of what these laws, who as a e-commerce business, these laws are going to affect. So if you think about, okay, it's only $100,000 or 200 transactions and I'm a small business, I'm just getting started, that's not really affecting me. But when you lower those thresholds and you see states trying to, make it apply to more sellers, it really has a bigger impact on kind of small business and medium-sized business that, fall within those ranges.
Yeah. So are they grandfathering some of this back? It sounded like in what you were talking about there, was this rule in place with South Dakota? Wayfair was ignoring it, and then they sued them because they were ignoring it. I didn't quite get that piece. Like, is this they're making the law and it's moving forward, or can they grandfather back and say, oh, you've been selling for 3 years, you owe us for the past 3 years too?
Yeah, so it's something that's definitely one of the things where I would recommend that based on whatever state you're in and what economic nexus laws you are required to comply with wherever you're, based on your particular business, it's something to look into. I would say generally a lot of the states are using this as a forward-looking law, and a lot of them, even if they had it on the books, some of them have come out and said, we're not going to have any kind of look back or penalties in the past. And so we, as TaxJar, our goal is to make e-commerce easier for everyone. We're solving that by sales tax. We specifically are on kind of everything that's going on relating to this. And so we've created a map that you can see on our website and on our blog that'll show you exactly what is current, future, or planned, or if something's pending litigation. So if you're wondering for your particular state, some states have had it on the books and, it's something that happened in the past, but you can also see if you're in a state that potentially has something that has passed that is going to be in effect later this year. So then you don't have to worry about lookbacks at all because it's a planned economic nexus law. So it really depends. There's no one answer on whether or not your state's going to look back, but generally the feeling is that most of these are forward looking.
So the states they want to get paid. They're like these the Main Street businesses have been complaining that the e-commerce people are not paying their fair share. So they're the hands are out and they want their money.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, that we all have been watching the growth of Amazon and the growth of e-commerce, and if you're a state, that's sales tax is a big part of your revenue, and as you see brick and mortar sales decline, you're also seeing that percentage of your known sales tax decline as that shifts to online. And if you look at places like Amazon, where they're actually collecting sales tax in every single state for their own purchases, you're seeing a shift in the way business is happening online, and the government just has to keep up with that. So it's a really tricky thing, but hopefully we can help in this podcast and in the future as well, just break this down for sellers and help them understand that, it is scary and it is, really complicated, but it's something that is the new way of doing business, I guess you could say. For sure. And I think,
yes, sales tax, if you just started a business and think you need to read 50 states' laws on sales tax, could sound a little bit scary, but hold on, everybody. There is a solution out there. That's why we're doing this podcast, to let you know that Ecwid has TaxJar built into the control panel. So it's very simple to activate automatic sales tax, so that when you are selling into Maryland, and Maryland changed their law yesterday, that you don't need to panic on that. So Lizzie, how are you guys able to keep up with all these different states? And are all these states' laws like automatically reflected into your tables and calculations?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that's one of the things, it's a piece of advice that I give a lot of sellers right now in e-commerce businesses when they ask, what do we do about this? And the answer is, choose a solution provider. Because if you think about, what we've talked about, how this is all managed on the state level, and keeping up with it might seem really daunting, choosing someone that is a technology provider that's focusing on this is the easiest way for you to kind of leverage the fact that we're staying up to date on it, so that your business, has everything they need to keep going. So to answer your question, yes, we're keeping up with everything related to this. We always have. This seems like a very big change for a lot of folks that haven't been, knee deep in sales tax as we have. But to be honest, rates change all the time. Sales tax has been changing all the time, and we've been keeping up with that so far. So while this may seem like, a really big change, it is, but we're ready for it. And we have a research team that, keeps up with everything that goes on, so that we make sure that all of our customers are up to date. And one thing I do want to point out is that one of the biggest questions folks have when they kind of start to understand economic nexus, and they start to think about, how does this affect my business? How am I supposed to figure out, with all these different laws out there, how am I supposed to figure out what is important to me? And so one of the things we've done is we've launched something called the Sales and Transactions Checker. And what this is it's an automated kind of audit that tells you, based on all of your information. So if you connect to Ecwid and just open up your TaxJar dashboard, and if you sell multi-channel, if you sell also, on eBay or anything like that, you can combine all of your information in a TaxJar, and for free, it will tell you exactly where you meet economic thresholds. So instead of you having to Google $100,000 in one state and 200 transactions and figuring out piece by piece where it affects your business, we'll just tell you that automatically. So if that's what you're wondering, if you're new to economic nexus or kind of figuring out how this ruling affects your business, I definitely recommend checking it out. It's completely free. And then you can also, explore on the other ways that we can help you after you check out that tool. But it's called the Sales and Transactions Checker, and you can find it on our website.
That's awesome. So that helps for the kind of the newer changes in the laws that are happening really as we speak. Now, I've been in e-commerce for a long time, and there's the Nexus question has always been a big one. And so for merchants that maybe they're not hitting those thresholds in certain states, is there also a way to check whether they have, physical Nexus where, maybe there's a warehouse? You mentioned these things before, but is there, do you have a way for customers to also check more the traditional Nexus?
Yeah. So I think for this piece, it's, Nexus is different for every business based on how you do your business, and how you run your business rather. But we do have, the trickiest thing, hopefully if you're running a business and you have a major warehouse in a certain city or state, you probably already know that by now. It's probably not, you don't need a tool to tell you where you have your internal logistics. But I think the biggest question that folks run into that you're talking about is folks that sell also on Amazon. Yeah. So if you're using a third-party fulfillment service, something like Amazon FBA, then the question becomes, okay, I now have inventory stored in all these warehouses that's being shipped to customers. I have physical Nexus as a result of that. How do I figure that out? Yeah. And Amazon does give you all that information within some reports called the inventory event detail within Seller Central. But the easiest way is to use TaxJar. We will take a look at all of your transactions and pull it up on your dashboard and tell you, we'll put a little Amazon FBA badge next to the states that we say you may have Nexus here due to FBA. And then, the next step is for you to figure out if you want to comply and start collecting there. But we will tell you that automatically.
Wow, that's really cool. I was not aware of that. So, and I know it's a problem, particularly with FBA, because there's warehouses in practically every state, and when you send stuff to Amazon, you don't necessarily know what state it's going to. So you might be like, I'm trying to avoid such and such state, and next thing you know, you have stuff there. Yeah, and so how do you plug into Amazon? So when people sell on Amazon, do you plug into the Amazon account, or how does that work?
Yep, you connect TaxJar directly to Amazon. It goes in via the API. You do it once, you never have to connect it again, similar to how we work with Ecwid. Once you've got that connection, then we pull in all of your data from there and we create sales tax reports for you. Okay. And so the reason why I'm mentioning this, and the reason why it's kind of important for sellers that are multi-channel, is that the state doesn't care where you made a sale, or that this was an Amazon sale or versus your Ecwid store sale. The state cares how many sales you made in their state completely. So if you're selling multi-channel, you need to aggregate all that information in order to know how much sales tax liability. So when you see these laws that say, if you have 200 transactions going into South Dakota, they're talking about 200 total, not 200 on Amazon or 200 on Ecwid or 200 on eBay. It's total business. So seeing all that information in a single spot is the best way for you to get a handle on knowing where you stand.
Sure. And am I correct in saying that if your product was in an Amazon warehouse in South Dakota at one point in the year, you're automatically expected to collect sales tax there? Is that the case?
Yeah, if you are, so if you have that physical presence due to having a warehouse and your products are being stored there, then yes, technically, according to the law, if you are, have that physical presence, that gives you Nexus and you're required to collect and remit sales tax. The next question we get a lot is, should I do that? Should I, when is the time to comply? And
that was my question. Yeah. So you're giving us the information, and then it's still up to the merchant to decide whether I need to send that $4 to South Dakota or not,
and we can preface by saying you should check with your attorney and we get all that. Like, this isn't completely follow these rules. Just
we're not telling you to not pay taxes. That's never my advice. This is recorded for posterity. But what I'm hearing is you give the information to the merchant, and the merchant then can make that decision on, do I comply or not?
Yes, that's exactly. So we, as TaxJar, we're a technology company. We're not CPAs. We're not giving you this information with a recommendation that you have to do something. So in that, we're the technology provider. We're telling you all the information. We're making it easy for you to get everything you need to make a decision for yourself. But we would recommend, if you have specific questions about that, talking with a sales tax CPA. We have vetted experts on our site if you need help finding someone that specifically knows sales tax, if your current CPA doesn't handle that. But the other thing we have to think about is you got to use a little bit of common sense. And the biggest answer to the question of, at what point do I comply is really a question of what is your risk tolerance as a business. Mm-hmm. So, as you talked about a second ago, you said if you have $4 here. We have folks that use TaxJar, and if they have a penny in a state, they go and comply and deal with it. And that's 100% all right and a great way to go. But you have to think about materiality and the cost, for your business particularly. If you are running a business that, you don't have a lot of sales yet and you have a very small margin, it might not be worth your effort to go and comply and register and start paying sales tax to a state with the costs and time associated with that if you have $4 that you owe.
Sure.
So TaxJar will tell you where you stand, so you can kind of take a look at that and see what your liability is. We estimate how much you would owe in that state to kind of give you that kind of gut check. Mm-hmm. You have to figure out for your business, though, what makes sense for you based on your risk tolerance. So if you're okay, if you have that $4 and the state comes after you and gives, penalties and fees and whatnot, and say you end up, that $4 ends up being $104. Let's just, ballpark something.
Sure.
If that $104 is going to put you out of business, then by all means start collecting and start remitting and, handling that $4. But if that's not material to your business, if you would just rather pay the fine and, move on and take a risk on that, then that's totally okay too. Sure. Obviously, I'm not recommending you break the law and don't comply, but there's a piece of common sense there that sellers need to kind of think about. And it's up to each individual business to determine what their individual risk tolerance is. So if I'm okay saying, okay, I'm going to let this ride because it's going to cost me more to comply than it is to actually give them the money, then go for it. And then when it gets to a point that makes you nervous, and is something material that if you got, caught by the state or penalized, it would be material, then the only way to kind of safeguard yourself and protect yourself is to register and start complying. So it's up to you to figure out what that threshold is for your business.
So, Lizzie, since you're integrated with API into Ecwid, how does it work as far as returns? Do you guys adjust, or is there any sort of calculation there? Or is that left up to the merchant to figure that out?
No, yeah, we do the full service. So with the TaxJar integration with Ecwid, we can help with the calculations, as I'm sure a bunch of your merchants already know. But once you've actually collected the right amount, or whatever amount you are intending to collect, we help you with the full automation all the way into filing. So we offer a product called AutoFile. And with AutoFile, what we do is we submit your filing to the state, in as many states as you'd like us to, for an additional fee, and you never have to worry about it. So if you're managing sales tax in multiple states, if you have due dates that are maybe a variety, so the state will assign you how often they need you to file. And so you may have a monthly responsibility. You may also have a different state with a quarterly and a different state with an annual. So keeping track of all those due dates, in addition to figuring out how to file, those two things are completely solved with AutoFile. So you tell us, hey, I file in this state monthly. You submit my payment and go for it, and I never have to worry about it. So, yep, it's called AutoFile, and we hopefully kind of eliminate your sales tax headache, is what we like to call it.
Wow, that sounds awesome. I know as a business owner, the things I want to focus on are marketing and new ads and emails. When I get to the point of the year where I have to pay my taxes, it's tough. So it's painful.
And I mean, as you said, like the things you mentioned with advertising and whatnot, those are all profitable revenue generating activities. You want to spend your time where you're going to grow your business. You don't want to spend time on something like sales tax, which has no revenue potential for your business.
Oh, for sure. And then particularly also the you mentioned the different times you would have to pay. It's one thing that, okay, income tax has to be paid at the end of the year. Okay, I got that. But sales tax, do you need to pay I know July is kind of a big time. Is it, is there other times?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's something that is, I think, it's a big frustration with folks that have to comply with sales tax, because you can't control what the state gives you for your frequency. And every state is different. So you may have a state that says you need to file monthly in Kansas and you need to file quarterly in Texas. But the thing is, as you mentioned, there's no date where it says all monthly filers file on the 13th of the month, or, every single state has their own date within that month that you have to file. So even if you're monthly everywhere, you may have 10 different days of the month that are your due dates. You can certainly pay early.
Sure.
If you just want to make it easy for your business. And a lot of states actually give you an early filing discount, which helps kind of cover the cost of compliance as well. So they'll just, being a good citizen and filing your sales tax and not being a headache for them, they reward you, giving you a little percentage of that back.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's you can't control it. Generally aligns to the size of your business. So in terms of how much money you're making. So if we kind of go back to the first conversation we had, the states want their money. And if you're a very large seller, they want you to pay them monthly so they get that sooner, rather than if you're a smaller seller, they're fine letting you wait till the end of the year potentially. But so the months where the quarterly filing and the annual filing and the monthly filing kind of all coincide at the same month. So like July is one, January is one. Those are the months that tend to be a little bit more hectic for e-commerce businesses that are managing sales tax, because it's basically the quarterly filing months that tend to get busier.
Yeah.
So I was going to also ask, we've covered quite a bit here, and thank you so much. This has been super useful, and I'm sure listeners definitely appreciate it. Are there any questions that we should be asking that we haven't asked that you could think of?
Yeah. So, when you ask me that question, I think back to kind of just the general question of what are you supposed to do? Because I think, people listen to your podcast for really great advice, and, it's kind of the actionable insight. How do you handle this Supreme Court ruling? How do you handle sales tax? And I think there's three things that I think about that I'd like to leave sellers with. Is one, determining your nexus. I think that's the first place to start. You've heard a lot, we've talked a lot about, filing and due dates and all these different things. But the first thing is to figure out where your business has nexus. Use TaxJar for, figuring out physical nexus, and use our tool for the economic nexus. And then just take a look back at your overall business and figure out if you have any other presence. And the next thing is figure out how to stay updated. So there's a lot of unknowns going on with, the Supreme Court rulings in new states adding economic nexus all the time. So make sure you're subscribing to a service that's going to keep you updated. We have a sales tax blog that keeps you updated. Obviously, our product is always updated, with everything that we do. But choose something that you can rely on, because I don't recommend going at it alone unless you really have a passion for sales tax, like we do.
I'm gonna put myself in the category of I want you to do it for me. For sure.
We'd love to do it for you. And yeah, the last thing I would say is just, figure out a way that you can handle sales tax moving forward. So use technology, use a solution like TaxJar, and accept it as a cost of doing business and move forward. A lot of folks are waiting for a marketplace to step in and solve sales tax for them, or Congress to step in. And it's just going to continue that sales tax headache that we talked about. So it's one of the things we have to accept as a reality of, doing business, being in the e-commerce space. Sales tax is going to be one of those things that is part of our future. And so use a piece of technology to automate it, move on, and really focus on that, using your time to grow your business and doing the things that, are going to drive impact for you. Don't waste your time on it. Let us handle it.
That makes perfect sense. I think for people listening here, just keep in mind, sales tax can be confusing, but the solution is right there. You just need to enable it inside your Ecwid control panel, and sales tax problems essentially go away. So Lizzie, that was super helpful for our users. I hope people found some benefit from that. Rich, are you ready to tackle some sales tax on your own?
No, I'm going to let them do it too. But I did want to ask real quick, where, other than enabling it in their Ecwid store, if they wanted to learn more about TaxJar, what's the best place for them to learn more about you guys?
Yeah, so visit our blog. Our blog has over 700 articles all about sales tax. We have different categories that will help you start if you're looking for 101 content or more advanced content. It's blog.taxjar, TaxJar.com, and you'll find pretty much everything you need there. You can search for it. So we'd love for you to visit it and subscribe, and we'll keep you updated with everything that you need to know relating to sales tax.
That's perfect. Lizzie, really appreciate you having you on the show. This is Jesse and Rich with the Ecwid e-commerce show. Have a good day. Well, Rich, there's another great show.
And when you add it all together with the other shows, you won't miss any strategies or new tactics on how to grow your online business.
So to make sure you don't miss anything, subscribe on your favorite podcast player. Rich, what player do you like?
Probably Stitcher.
All right.
How about you?
I'm an Apple podcast guy. I'm an Apple guy on that.
Yeah.
And we're growing right now. A listener asked us to add Google Play as a platform. So we just added that a couple weeks ago. We have Spotify, SoundCloud.
Nice. We're everywhere.
So subscribe on your favorite platform, and don't forget to rate and review us.
So we know what you think.
Yeah, rate how we're doing, review on what we have done, tell us topics you'd like us to cover, tell us if you think we're great and you are going to take over the world.
Subscribe, rate, and review.
It's the only way we'll know, and it keeps the shows coming. Thanks, everybody.